There has been a lot of news happening in the Formula One world the past 12 hours. Obviously, 12 hours ago, it was announced that Perez would be leaving Racing Point. And now, just about 20 minutes ago, Vettel has now signed with Racing Point for the 2021 season. So my initial reaction for this was I thought this was incredibly harsh on Sergio Perez. He's a very consistent driver. When there is an opportunity to score a podium, Perez usually pounces on that. Rarely makes a mistake on the track, Sergio Perez. And I just think it's very sad for him to be leaving Racing Point at the end of the season. It's a shame that they forced him out. Obviously, if the team were not owned by Lawrence Stroll, which is the father of Lance Stroll, then I think Lance Stroll would have been the one to leave. But I think even the criticism for Lance Stroll is very harsh because I do think he's a very good driver. He hasn't, obviously, I don't think he's as good as Sergio Perez, which I think is which is a more than fair enough statement because I do think that Perez is comfortably better than Lance Stroll. Not dominant of Lance Stroll necessarily, although last season it was a bit one-sided, but this season Stroll has been a lot better. So I do think the criticism that Lance Stroll's getting is a bit harsh, but at the same time, I think he should have been the one that should be leaving Racing Point, and if it weren't for his father owning the team, then he would be the one gone. But I still think that Lance Stroll does deserve a place in Formula One, and the hate that he's been getting is probably a bit harsh in my view, as is the move from Racing Point to get rid of Sergio Perez. So, yeah, I feel sorry for the guy. But in terms of Sebastian Vettel moving on to Racing Point, which will become Aston Martin for 2021, I'm happy for him for sure. But I think it's a bit of a surprise considering how poor Vettel has been the last couple of years. He's made a lot of mistakes on the track. He's spun out crud a few times. He's been too aggressive at times where he probably doesn't need to be aggressive. He's also been slower than his teammate Charles Leclerc in the last 2 years in general, although there have been a few times where obviously Vettel has beaten Leclerc, but in general Leclerc has been the better driver. And for me, just Vettel's performance levels have just dropped dramatically from his Red Bull days or his early Ferrari days where obviously on his day he's as good as any driver, but unfortunately for him he has lost it a lot. But you know what, with this move to Racing Point, his form could definitely turn around, being that he will be in the better car for Ferrari, which I'm happy than him for, because Ferrari, as much as Vettel has been bad, Ferrari have not treated him well at all. They have treated him very poorly, treated Vettel as second fiddle, particularly when they did announce that Vettel would not be at Ferrari next season. So I think that has been very poor from Ferrari. So I'm hoping that this move for Sebastian Vettel will be a good one. I'm hoping his form can turn around. He should get treated better at Aston Martin as well. It'll be very interesting to see how it goes up against Lance Stroll. He should be the better driver, I think, than Lance Stroll, particularly obviously the pedigree that he has, 4-time champion. And just in general, he's going to go down as one of the all-time greats. But even with this move for Sebastian Vettel, even though that he'll be a lot happier being in a better car, there will be more pressure on Sebastian Vettel to perform, particularly against his teammate Lance Stroll. I feel like if Lance Stroll ends up beating Vettel, which I'm not going to rule out, to be honest. I know you're probably thinking that Vettel should easily beat Stroll, but don't forget, Stroll has had a relatively good 2020 so far. Not even relatively good. He has been really good in 2020. And if Stroll can improve further in 2021, then who knows? Stroll might be able to match with Vettel, particularly if Vettel is unable to turn around his form that he's been in, and if he's unable to change his performances from what they used to be. I guess we'll have to wait and see. It'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. I hope that Racing Point can once again put a good car together for Vettel, so that way he can perhaps challenge for podium. So that'll be very good to see. So now I want to talk about Sergio Perez. As I mentioned, I think Perez should have stayed. I thought it was very harsh that Racing Point forced him to move, but because of the fact that, as I mentioned already, that Lawrence Stroll's the owner of the team, unfortunately they were always, if they wanted to move someone to get in Vettel, they were always going to move Sergio Perez out of the team. So I think that was very harsh. But in terms of Perez now, I think that he will remain in Formula One next season. Unfortunately, he won't be in one of one of the good cars anymore. He'll probably have to settle for Haas or Alpha. I have a feeling he'll probably go to Haas because I think Alpha will probably look at keeping Giovinazzi, even though Giovinazzi hasn't exactly been good for Alfa Romeo this season. He's been okay, but he can probably do a little bit better. And while I think Kimi Räikkönen will retire, but I think Alfa will look to bring in someone from F2, either Mick Schumacher or Robert Schwartzman. I'd love it for it to be Mick Schumacher because Michael Schumacher was the reason I got into Formula One. I'm not going to lie. So I'd love to see that Schumacher name back into Formula One. So I think Haas is probably the most likely option here for Perez. I don't think Grosjean or Magnussen have been good enough in recent times for either of them to stay in Formula One, but if I had to keep one of them, you know what, Grosjean for me has probably actually been I don't know, it's a hard one. I feel like at times Grosjean has been the better driver, surprisingly, in 2020, but for me, I'd probably still keep Magnussen. I still feel like Grosjean is definitely a bit of a liability, so I'd love to see Sergio Perez stay in Formula One in the Haas car. And don't forget, Haas did go on record to say a few weeks ago that they are looking for a paid driver to represent them next year for one of their seats, and I think Perez would fit the bill perfectly there. So yeah, I guess that's a bit of my reaction for what has happened in Formula One for the past 12 hours. I didn't exactly do my 100% research on this. This is more of me just talking on the top of my head, since this is just something that had just happened. So I think I'll finish it there. Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.